Welcome to the intersection of technology, cybersecurity, and society. Welcome to ITSP Magazine. Join us on our journey into the past, the present, and the future as we explore the relationship between technology and humanity. Together, we are going to find out what it means to live in a society where everything is connected and the only constant is change. Knowledge is power, now more than ever.
Nintex is the global standard for business process management and automation. The Nintex platform helps their clients accelerate progress on their digital transformation journeys by quickly and easily managing, automating, and optimizing business processes. Learn more at nintex.com.
Blue Lava is the first business platform for CISOs to manage their security program. Blue Lava guides security leaders to effectively measure, optimize, and communicate their security program with confidence and ease in one platform. Learn more at bluelava.net.
Marco.
Sean, are you ready for a good conversation?
I am. I'm on a mission.
You're on a mission?
On a mission.
Which one? I know you have many.
I do have many, and most revolve around food, but today it's all about making money. Economy to make money. Which allows me and everybody else to buy a bunch of food. But the problem is, Marco, is if we drive so hard to make money and forget about sustainability and the food, let's say, that's part of that picture, we might be doing ourselves, or at least the future generations, some harm and some disservice at a minimum, right?
Yep, and we are definitely at a point where everything and everybody is talking about this, and I'm afraid that I haven't found that article, that book, that documentary that say, here's the solution, because I feel like the solution is not much in the idea, but in the will of the people to actually accomplish and get involved into this grand scheme, grand idea, grand strategy.
Yeah, a grand strategy.
So I got there.
You did get there. And I have a feeling that will is the core, but without a plan, we might not have a good direction either. So to help us with this conversation, because I think we're going to take things so far that they're going to be beyond my comprehension until the end of this. We have Joel Makower joining us from GreenBiz Group. Joel, thanks for being part of this.
It's great to be here. Thanks.
And to let everybody know who the voice is coming from, maybe a few words about the work you do, some of the books you've written to kind of set the stage for the things you care most about and are passionate about.
Yeah, thanks. Well, I am the chairman and executive editor and co-founder of a company called GreenBiz Group, based up here in beautiful Oakland, California. And we're a media and events company and focusing on the intersection of business and sustainability and technology. I'm a journalist by training, so I've been in this particular field for over 30 years. As it's changed considerably over that time, and particularly over the past few years. So it's an incredibly dynamic and exciting and engaging and frankly hopeful part of the economy that just now really starting to come to light at the mainstream level, but been lots and lots and lots going on below the surface for a long, long time.
Yeah, that's for sure. I mean, I think I don't know if you agree with what I said when I was we were kicking off the conversation here on this podcast about maybe not being prepared psychologically and strategically. It's a trait that humans kind of have. So I like to look at the past and kind of to predict the future, like on some virtual time machine. And I don't know if we learn so much from the past and we move so fast into the future until we hit the wall and like, hey, wait a minute, there is a wall here. And I don't know. I mean, what is your vision in this, and how did you decide for example, on the title, we can start from that book that we were mentioning, is the new grand strategy. I mean, I think there's a lot into that, Alon.
Sure. I mean, and the subtitle of that is Restoring America's Prosperity, Security, and Sustainability in the 21st Century. Yeah, it's pretty interesting. I wasn't looking to write another book. I've written a bunch of books around business and sustainability and corporate responsibility and a whole range of topics around that. And then a number of years ago, I met a guy called Mark Puck Mickleby, called Puck not because he is a Shakespearean actor, but because he's from Minnesota and plays hockey. And in the Marines, where he spent 20-some years, that was the nickname he got. And Puck had a really fascinating story in about 2009, early 2009, in the opening days of the Obama administration. He was brought into the Pentagon by Mark Mullen, who at the time was the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the highest ranking military officer in the US government, and asked to come up with a strategy, not a military strategy. We had a bunch of those: intelligence strategy, weapons strategy, all kinds of strategies. This was a strategy for America's future. And I interviewed Mullins and as we did this book, and basically said, what were you thinking? And he said, well, I didn't know what we were fighting for, the 1.5 million men and women I have out there in harm's way. I wasn't sure what we were fighting for. Yeah, to defeat the terrorists and all of those things that we talk about politically, but what's the world in which we wanted to succeed? And what's the world we envision that we're fighting for, in effect? And so Puck, along with a counterpart in the Navy called Wayne Porter, holed up for a few months, and they came back with a plan that basically puts sustainability in the center as a national strategic imperative. And sustainability is one of these words like, what the hell does it mean? We hear talk about it as environmental stuff, as a climate change. What does it mean? And it means lots of different things, and we can get into that. But basically, they defined sustainability as an organism's ability to grow and prosper over time, that really goes to basically the underlying characteristics of America, which is prosperity and security. So, how do we become a more resilient country? And again, once again, a beacon of hope to the rest of the world. And so what the plan called for, and this is what our book became about, was dusting off something called grand strategy, which is something that America has done at critical times in its history to align its governance structures with its economic systems, with its foreign policy, to take on the big challenges of the time. So in World War II, our grand strategy was basically called the Arsenal of Democracy, that we were arming the good guys and helping defeat the bad guys, in effect. And then after World War II, we all of a sudden we had this the specter of communism, Russia, Soviet Union, and we weren't about to get into another war, and we knew we didn't want to take on the Soviet Union on the battlefield, particularly given the nuclear weapons that had since evolved since the end of World War II. So the goal was called containment, the strategy, the grand strategy, and that was about containing the Soviet Union on the global chessboard while outcompeting it economically in the global markets. And so in each of these cases, we've aligned our governance structures, our economic priorities with our foreign policy to take on those challenges. And so, okay, communism, they lowered the hammer and sickle on the Kremlin for the last time, was at 1991, I think, and it's been 30 years. And so what's our grand strategy now? We don't really have one. We've kind of been operating off that old playbook. And so what we came up with was the strategy that looks at how do we do what grand strategy has always done, which is start with the economy, leverage the power of the private sector and business to align with the goals of the national goals of arming the world or containing communism or whatever it is. And so now, how do we do that to align with the big threats that we have, the existential threats, climate change, of global population that we may not be able to feed and clothe and nurture, and so many other things that are equally important, and something that's been a big conversation these days is our resilience deficit, which is to say that our infrastructure, our supply chains, basically the fabric, the underlying fabric that keeps society running globally is frayed. It's falling apart. And as we saw, whether it's the freak winter storm in Texas that knocked out the power grid, or that runaway tanker in the Suez Canal that blocked that, we're pretty fragile these days. We don't have a lot of resilience. Those things quickly, the pipeline and the cybersecurity, cyber threats are there on that colonial pipeline. Relatively small, significant things, but relatively small things in one place in the world can have global implications in the economy and in the well-being of people's lives. So, that's, I think, the interesting challenge and opportunity here. And it is a huge, massive, multi-trillion-dollar opportunity, is how do we think about the economy through the lens of sustainability, our ability to remain diverse and productive over time. That's, I think, is a fascinating story. And that's the book we wrote.
And Joel, I was on a call the other night with a group of chief risk officers, and they happened to be in Asia, and where Australia happens to be locked down at the moment and kind of separate from the rest of the world. So my question to you is around globality, the global economy, perhaps the move toward, because you talked about the supply chain. If people can't move in and out of Australia and can't get goods in and out of Australia, and likewise, if the rest of the world can't take things from Australia and work with people in Australia as easy as it could before, as just one example, are we seeing a drive toward more localized economies and localized supply chains, and therefore a drive to build sustainability for ourselves? And how does that affect the grand strategy on the global scale?
Well, sure. The relocalization of commerce is certainly one story on inshoring, reshoring of commerce. That's one piece of it. But let's step back for a second, because I think what's interesting here, I speak a lot. I go travel around the country, around the world, talking to business groups, business schools, all kinds of organizations, and talking about what's going on out there in this world that we're talking about here around sustainability and technology and the business sector. And first of all, most people don't have a clue what's going on, and the fullness of it, and how much incredible stuff is going on. But I talk about why it's going on. Everybody likes to talk about the business case, as if there's a business case for, basically cooking the planet out of existence. What's the business place for sustainability and clean technology and all of this? And I have an old answer and a new answer. And the old answer is sort of the thing that you see at every presentation that people do about their, companies do about their sustainability strategy. It's about increased sales, decreased costs, new products and markets, increased ability to attract capital and attract and retain talent, being a preferred supplier, brand reputation, things like that. And so that's the old answer, and it's not untrue, but now it really boils down to one word: risk. And, there's lots of different kinds of risk. There's financial risk, reputational risk, right to operate risk, transition risk, technology risk, legal risk, regulatory risk, all kinds of things. But that's really what's driving this. And so, of course, one of the flip sides of risk is resilience. Resilience is a word we talk about a lot, but it's really about the ability to to absorb shocks and come back quickly from them. A resilient person can deal with illness or death in a family or divorce or a job loss or whatever it is and come back, maybe not right away, but bounce back. Whereas a non-resilient person kind of will get laid flat. And a resilient nation will deal with a pandemic or political turmoil or economic downturn or any number of other things, terrorism, cyber terrorism. We'll deal with it and come back. And America has always prided itself on being resilient. So to your question, part of this is really about how do we build resilience into the system? And part of resilience is not having to rely on oceans to cross oceans and even pipelines and canals. And how do we do more things, source more materials, and do more business where we are already. And what that goes to with things like the circular economy, how do we keep materials in flow in a region, in a given area, whether that's a small region or a large region, instead of sending things, overseas to have them processed and sending them back here to have them manufactured or whatever the process is. And so, and then at the same time, the technology is enabling so many of these kinds of things, the Internet of Things, additive manufacturing, AI, machine learning, robotics are allowing things to be, custom produced locally, sometimes with available materials, local materials, distributed locally. We're seeing the beginnings of revolutions in manufacturing, dematerializing it, decarbonizing it, and increasing the local content. So I know that was a really long answer to a short question about, bringing things back, stateside in the case of the U.S. But this is part of a trend, and there will always be things that we need to do elsewhere, things that need to be made somewhere because of labor, because of material availability, because of any number of things. That's just market economics. But the technology is really moving very quickly to enable us to do a lot more things locally than we could ever do before.
So I love this podcast because you answer question before I ask them, and you make my job so easy. But at the same time, you create new question in my head. So I'm gonna connect to this, and one thing that I really learned to look into every issue and topic we talk about is, and it reflects the technology side of things, is the convergency of new technologies that come together that allow to do things that even if we wanted to do years ago, we just couldn't do it, right? And I was just reading, I believe, on the MIT magazine the other day that there are a lot of good intention and a good idea, for example, for renewable cities and green cities and stuff like that. But in order to reach the goal that we want to have, we need some technology that is not even here yet. So what is the driver and what resonates when you talk to people at the government? You say, schools, university and business. What is the common denominator, and what do you think is going to drive this acceleration, even more acceleration of the technology that we need to get there?
Well, it's always some combination of fear and greed. The fear part is, frankly, climate change. We're finally, after 30 years of warnings, beginning to understand the implications of a changing climate and how it's going to manifest itself, and already is manifesting itself in many, many ways that are potentially hugely detrimental to people, economies, and of course the planet. We're recognizing that 50% of global GDP is dependent upon nature services and ecosystems, and that are now being threatened by climate change. We're understanding that that climate is changing the chemistry of oceans, which is going to affect the food chain and fisheries. We're changing the way we do agriculture. We're looking at how we do all sorts of things. And so, and the failure to do that, we're beginning to finally understand could be catastrophic. I mean, we're seeing now finally the Federal Reserve and the Treasury Department and the economic Wall Street in general stepping up and saying, not just, oh, this is the nice thing to do, but holy crap, we got to deal with this stuff because the entire global economy is threatened here. And we're learning, as we've learned over the past year and a half, that something, seemingly random can take down the economy at least several pegs, and that was just relatively tame stuff compared to what's possible if we start to see having to relocate tens of millions of climate refugees, for example, or persistent droughts in parts of the world where people are literally dying there's just no way to get water to them, food and everything else. And of course, the flip side of that, the greed side, is that these are massive business opportunities. There are many trillion-dollar markets that are, food, energy, building, transportation, materials that are tied to these things. And so we're at this really fascinating inflection point right now, and will be for the next decade at least, where we have the opportunity to reinvent our world. I mean, that sounds like hyperbole, but I literally reinvent how we make things, how we buy things, how we travel, how we live, how we work, how we shop, how we play. It's going to be very different in many respects than it was 10 or 20 years ago. And so there's huge opportunities. There's also huge disruption that we're seeing in the fossil fuel industry right now as the oil and coal industries are heading down, winding down in effect, or at least over the next decade or two, and that the disruption and displacement of workers. But growing much faster than that are the jobs in the clean economy, or the climate tech, as it goes by all kinds of different names. And that's what my company's been leaning into, is how do we identify, accelerate, help get training for those people, and bring those to light for those who aren't yet seeing them. These incredible opportunities are going to come out of this, frankly, existential moment.
Yeah, and Joel, I want to get, so much there to unpack, and hopefully everybody's just scratching their head going, okay, what's my role here? And I'm wondering your view of the role of government in this, taking it back to the grand strategy. How do we move this forward as a grand strategy? Because I think we've landed in a place now where there are pockets of innovation, pockets of technology leading the way on certain things that may or may not play well with other areas, right? So they might be competing or creating gaps, digital divide, for one example, where only people with money can access some of these new things. So are we going to end up creating a world that is sustainable, but only for some? So I'm wondering, with that in mind, how does the government help drive this grand strategy?
Yeah.
Or is it going to be some billionaire somewhere that leads the way?
Well, it's neither. It's both and. There's roles for everybody. And the question, what we created in this book was a vision that we believe is equally compelling on both the right and the left. So on the left it's a lot of priorities around energy and hunger and well-being of people and local communities and things that traditionally have been more on the progressive or the Green New Deal side, if you will. But the way we've laid it out is this is by business, for profit, and government can lead, follow, or get out of the way. There's a lot of things government could do to enable this, but what's really remarkable is how much has happened. Think about the past 5 years. We haven't had a lot of government leadership in clean technology, at least in the United States. Quite the contrary. We've doubled down on the older polluting ways, fossil fuels, and all of that. And yet, the inexorable march of technology and innovation has been significant and frankly breathtaking at times, to the point where renewable energy is now cost competitive, cheaper in many cases, and more reliable and more resilient to extreme weather than traditional fossil fuel energy. But it's also, what's interesting about this, so what's fascinating is how much has taken place in the absence of government leadership, at least at the national level in the United States. So there's a number of things the government could do to backstop, to support, to encourage, that don't necessarily involve trillions of dollars of spending. That a lot of it is sending signals. And by the way, this is all stuff that's happened in the past, things the government did during World War II to help move things along the transition to from auto plants to building tanks and airplanes. These weren't necessarily things that were mandated. These are things the government supported and enabled, and the private sector stepped in and did what the private sector knows how to do. So at the same time, but what's really fascinating here for me is the private sector really stepping in, because again, opportunity, huge, massive opportunities, but also the threat that they see right now. The entire global financial system, the central banks, the Feds, and the European central banks, and it's their counterparts all over the world. And the major financial institutions are all lining up around climate change. For one simple word, the same word I used before, risk. That this is about, if we don't deal with this, we understand that the financial system could quickly collapse under the weight of massive changes and shocks that could happen to in the world and to markets and things, extreme weather and all of a sudden the inability to conduct commerce and things like that. What happens to banks? It doesn't, as we learned in 2008, it doesn't take a lot for all of a sudden this cascading effect. And all of a sudden you've got major financial institutions that are in deep doo-doo, to use a technical term, and we're all of a sudden shelling out billions of dollars or trillions of dollars to bail them out. And so government isn't necessarily, sure, the government's there at the Federal Reserve and the Treasury Department, and they're just thinking about this stuff, but they're really there to support the private sector. And that's what to me is most exciting about this. I'm a lifelong, Democrat, and definitely wake up most days on the left side of the bed. But I'm also a markets guy. I believe that business has incredible power, and business has unequaled potential to drive change with or without government support. And I'm doing, and in my company, we do everything we can to help burnish and bolster that. And I think that's really where the action is. Government has not been at the forefront of this. If it may be, and we're starting to see that with President Biden, for example, that political leaders see a parade and all of a sudden realize they need to be in the front of it. And that may be happening, and that would be a beautiful thing. But the parade's on. The parade's moving. The parade's going strong, and it's getting bigger and bigger every week. And it's a massive global parade. And so government, as I said, lead, follow, or get the hell out of the way.
Yeah, that'd be nice, instead of like trying to make us trip other people in the parade, right? Putting a stick in between our feet.
well, that will still happen. There are plenty of people who don't see this, who are threatened by this, who believe in, for whatever reason, just as the fact that the last election was a fraud, that so is climate change and probably the pandemic and the vaccine and everything else. Those people exist. They're going to be around. There are going to be lots of them, and at various times they're going to be hugely disruptive to progress. And so the question is, how does the parade continue to march forward, stepping over those sticks, avoiding them, just plowing through them in many cases, because that's what's necessary. Those sticks are going to be out there in force for quite some time.
You know what I like about this parade analogy, Joel, is that there's no one style of parade. I mean, there are lots of different styles. You have a military parade, you have a holiday parade, you have
gay pride parade,
you have school parades, everything. So the diversity in these parades, and each one has a different leader for a different purpose, but all marching toward the same objective. But they all look different. People have their own role to play in that parade. Some is music, some is dance, whatever it is. And I think parades will continue, right? Humans love parades, Marco.
Yeah, we love parades and we love diversity, and we know the value of it. And we also been learning more and more about circular economy and understanding that we just cannot be parading blindly into the future if we care about the next generation. I mean, why are we going to the moon, to Mars, and who knows where in the end? But until that time, we need to take care of our planet. There's no questions about it. So to wrap this conversation, Joel, you've been doing this for a while. You've wrote a lot of books. You're consulting with a lot of companies. What is your personal vision for, what could happen in this time limit that we've been giving ourselves, with the clock ticking towards this possible, really, really ugly scenarios that we're facing? Are you feeling good about it? Are you leading the parade?
Well, I'm right in there. We're marching along. I mean, being in sustainability is an inherently optimistic profession. We wake up most days thinking about solutions, thinking about moonshots. We talk in bold, audacious plans, zero carbon emissions by mid-century, zero waste factories, 100% renewably powered, things that seemed audacious a while ago and now are either happening or we're on the march in process. So I continue to be extremely optimistic about the power of business, about the role of technology, about the will of humans. But time is not on our side. The indicators are terrifying in terms of what's happening on the ground, literally, and what's happening in climate change. And we have a biodiversity crisis where we're finding that we're species that we rely on as humans for our well-being and economic and personal well-being are being threatened, if not going away. We don't think of this not just a few birds and trees. These are things that feed us, that control erosion, that keep insects away, that keep predators at bay. They do a number of things that we don't think about and we don't pay for, but they're 24/7, 365, and those are being threatened, plain and simple. So time is not on our side. We have to move quickly. We're starting to move much more quickly than we have, but it's still not fast enough. And that's the tension, is how do we make this incredible? I'm going to go from a marching to a ship, but how do we turn this massive ship in much faster than we've ever turned a ship before? Because we're just sailing in the wrong direction, and we realize that here's where we need to go, but it's not so simple. And so that's the really fascinating part. That's why I'm never ever bored with this. It's changes constantly, and it's fascinating, and it's that tension between the urgency, the existential threat, and the unlimited opportunity that's staring us in the face.
Yeah, this is the ultimate risk management challenge. Resiliency and redundancy and God forbid disaster recovery, right?
Well, there will be disasters. We're seeing the disasters every year, and they're getting worse and worse: wildfires, droughts, hurricanes, floods, tornadoes, and everything else. The question is how well suited will we be to adapt to them, to hold them off? We can't stop them, but we can build around them, and then to ensure that they don't get any worse than they already are. And that's again a huge threat and a huge opportunity.
And the opportunities there, if you want to learn more about what that looks like, everybody should grab Joel's book. It is The New Grand Strategy, Restoring America's Prosperity, Security, and Sustainability in the 21st Century. Yeah, there's an opportunity for everybody here to understand what the risk is. And I think the huge diversity in terms of innovation and plans, hopefully all wrapped up in what is a grand new strategy. So
And if I may, Sean, just encourage,
Yes.
since we write about this every week, we publish at greenbiz.com. We publish 7 newsletters every week, 7 weekly newsletters on food, energy, circular economy, and finance, and a number of other things. So encourage people, they're free, go grab those and check out the kinds of things, because as you look at this stuff week in and week out, it really is frankly heartening about all that is going on.
Yeah. Appreciate that, Joel. And yeah, there will be links to resources in the show notes for this, so lots of opportunity for folks to get involved. And so, Marco.
Yep, nothing more to add. I think we cover a lot of ground, that this will be one of those conversations that could last forever, and probably will last forever, except not in one set. So thank you very much, Joe. I really enjoyed learning a lot from your perspective.
It's my pleasure. Thank you both.
Blue Lava is the first business platform for CISOs to manage their security program. Blue Lava guides security leaders to effectively measure, optimize, and communicate their security program with confidence and ease in one platform. Learn more at bluelava.net.
Nintex is the global standard for business process management and automation. The Nintex platform helps their clients accelerate progress on their digital transformation journeys by quickly and easily managing, automating, and optimizing business processes. Learn more at nintex.com.